It's about plants called pitcher plants, and I actually saw some of these on my recent visits to the UK. So I'm particularly interested in plants anyway. But when this was about plants that I'd recently been looking at Oxford Botanic Gardens and at Kew Gardens, and now pitcher plants are a classic of the so-called carnivorous plants, and these are a bit of intriguing, particularly for people who are trying to put the biblical history of the world in terms of what different animals people ate. And here we've got plants that are supposedly designed to eat invertebrates, in other words, small insects and other creepy crawlies that fall into them and get digested. So what did the carnivorous plants eat in the very good world? Because we're told that the animals were all designed to eat plants. So carnivorous plants seem to be a bit of the opposite of that, and they have a sort of creepy connotations, don't they? That sort
Yeah,
of
they're in the Addams Family lounge room.
that's right. That's right. Yes, that sort of horror story type thing. That's somebody by genetic engineering bred a giant carnivorous plant that ate people. Actually, there's a classic science fiction book, The Day of the Triffids, which
Yeah.
is actually a good story. But yes, so they have these connotations as being something creepy and evil and awful. So why would God create them? Uh, and at the Oxford Botanic Gardens, we saw these things here. These are pitcher plants. Now, there is an interesting thing that they've found out about pitcher plants, and this was acknowledged at the Botanic Gardens. They had this sign here to tell people about them, where they were found. And now notice the little inset there next to the photos. It says tree shrew toilets. And literally, these plants actually act as a toilet for tree shrews, in other words, small mammals. And the way this works is that the underside of that overhanging lid produces some very nutritious sweet secretions. And these little mammals will come and lick that up. They think this is really good stuff, and it is actually very nutritious. Now, in order to do that, they have to perch on the edge of the pitcher, or the bottom part of the plant there, and their droppings just fall into the pitcher. And so this was quite an intriguing find. And so scientists thought, well, is this really nourishing the plant, or is it just a sort of accidental thing? And so they did some studies of where you can trace nutrients in plants using isotopes. That's not necessarily radioactive, but just to see whether the plants are actually absorbing and using nutrients. And in particular, plants need nitrogen. They can make their own carbohydrates, in other words, calcium, hydrogen and oxygen, that's sugar. They can make their own, but they do need to absorb nitrogen from somewhere else, from the soil or from somewhere else, in order to make proteins. So were they using these animal droppings as a source of nitrogen to genuinely nourish and build up the plants? So some scientists did some studies, and they found that yes, indeed, they were they were getting their nitrogen from animal excreta, or shrew poo, if you like. And in fact, they described this as a highly efficient strategy. In other words, it worked really well. The plants thrived if they were able to get these animal droppings. So that gives us a clue as to what was the original purpose for these carnivorous plants. Now, cleaning up animal droppings is actually what they call an ecosystem service. In other words, for recycling nutrients. That gives us a clue as to what these particular plants, it's very clear with these pitcher plants, because it's actually been observed, this recycling nutrients. But there are other different types of plants that seem to eat animals, or eat animal in little invertebrates and things like that, that seem to be designed to kill. But maybe they're not designed to kill any more than the pitcher plants are. Maybe it's just an accidental thing as part of the degeneration of the whole world, that they end up killing these small little creatures. And I think